Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today with Krista and Nathan, just to talk about Barbie behind the brand. We had a really engaging conversation to go through, so I have a bunch of questions. Before we jump in, though, I did want to kick off the stage with just a quick introduction for everyone. So I know it's great for the group to just hear a little bit more about your background and your roles. I can kick it off quickly and introduce myself. So I've been in media for 18 years, spanning search marketing, influencer content, YouTube. I've been at Teads a little over a year and a half. Teads, we are a global media platform. We enable brands like Barbie to connect with consumers across premium publisher environments, omnichannel. And Teads provides all the tech stack behind the scenes to enable them to connect with the right consumers at the right time, studio optimized creative to maximize the impact of that consumer touch point, and all the measurement behind the scenes. So there's a little bit of background on us. Krista and Nathan, did you want to jump in and provide a little bit of background on your roles at Barbie? And
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Krista. I have been at Mattel for 14 years now, and about half of that time has been spent on Barbie in some capacity. I've worked in a number of different brands and segments of the company. I've worked in 2 different campuses. It's a global organization. But the last 5 have really been spent driving the Barbie business in partnership with the man sitting here to my right, Mr. Nathan.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Nathan. I've worked at Mattel for, I guess, about 11 years. And I've worked on Barbie that whole time in some way, shape, or form. I came in, it's going to sound so archaic. And I helped launch our YouTube channel, right? Like that sounds so archaic and I sound so old. That's okay. And worked on a lot of content strategy and distribution. And then I moved into brand marketing a couple of years after I started there. And then I've been on the journey of the brand ever since. It's been quite a story. And then about, I would say 4 years ago, I got responsibility for the total dolls category, which includes a whole host of other brands like Monster High and Polly Pocket and soon to be Disney Princess and Frozen. So now have to do some portfolio management, but drive brand marketing, brand strategy, where we show up kind of outside of toy, but then also how we sort of activate from a marketing perspective to drive our foundational toy business.
And then my role in partnership with Nathan's is focused on product marketing specifically, and then also brand partnership. So anything that you see with a couture designer, anything that you see with sort of a celebrity partnership is run in concert with my team. And so the 2 of us together serve as sort of the thought leaders and stewards for this legacy brand.
Yeah.
just incredible. So based on some of our conversations, I know we've got 2 videos that we're going to show everyone to kind of kick off the stage. The first one, I think we can jump into that one.
Sure.
Hello, my name is Gwyneth, and I'll be your professor today. Good morning, everyone. I'm your new coach. My name is Maddie. Nice to meet you. I had the most fantastic day in the office. We got that new business I wanted. Peter, the Triceratops, is 1 year old. The T-Rex, Sally, is 1,002,252 years old. Knees up like a unicorn. Higher, higher. We can think and do lots of stuff with our brain. Now, does anybody know how big the brain is? Anybody? Sophia. It is medium. Medium. Very good.
So sweet. So it takes me back to my childhood of playing Barbies hours on end. But I think based on the video, I wanted just to hear a little bit behind that campaign.
Yeah.
And the narrative was really interesting to hear it when we had our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing about that work's 7 years old at this point, but I think it represents a moment in time that was sort of a key pivotal moment for the brand, where Barbie had lost her way a little bit. And we were seeing that in the sales of the business. We were seeing that in consumer response. And one of the interesting nuances of toys and the toy business, the old adage was you get kid and you win, right? So it was all nag factor. If a kid says they're going to buy it, eventually if they ask 10 times, the parent's going to buy it for him. So marketing wise, you're just talking to kids. But what we saw back in 2013, 2014, was that what used to be a real strength for the brand, which was that we were a multi-generational brand and parents would pass the brand down to their kids. Millennial moms weren't doing that anymore. And what we heard them saying was, well, I played with Barbie, but I would never give it to my daughter. Huge problem. So, and what we realized was we weren't actively engaging in a conversation with them. So everyone else was doing the talking about who we were and what we represented and what we looked like and all those conversations. And so there was a lot of work done around sort of laying the foundation of what do we stand for? What's our purpose? Why are we here? Going back to the beginning, honestly, of what the brand was, which is a whole other story that you could do a whole other talk about. But Ruth Handler was one of the co-founders of the company, an amazing woman, entrepreneur who literally ran the finances of the company, but couldn't write a check on behalf of it in 1959. You know, going back to the beginning of what the brand represented and the fact that it was about enabling empowerment for girls, storytelling for them, choices and careers and all of that. We realized we needed to remind these parents who had played with the brand what the play was all about and what the magic of it really was about. And that's what this spot was about. It was about reminding parents of this is actually what's happening when your kids are playing with Barbie. And so we launched that campaign back in 2015. And so the starting point of the turnaround was communication, because that's what we could impact first, you know, and establishing our purpose, which is to inspire the limitless potential in every girl. And then baking that into everything that we're doing.
Yeah. And so if you want to inspire the limitless potential in every girl, you have to look like the world she sees around her. And that was one of the things where the brand had always been at the forefront of innovation. Barbie was the first fashion doll brand in the industry. We invented the category, and we sort of stopped innovating and stopped reflecting. Barbie is at her best when she is a reflection of culture and when she is in tune with the cultural zeitgeist. And so in 2015, we did the riskiest thing you can do with a brand that is 50 years old, which is to say we changed the product and we introduced new body types into the brand and finally changed the form factor. There's a wonderful documentary on Hulu called Tiny Shoulders, which takes you through that journey, because again, there's a lot I could talk about and not a lot of time in this. But if you think about something that sounds so simplistic, and when I first started at Mattel in 2008, the comments I'd get from like my aunts or my friends' parents were like, can't you do something about her body? And I'm like, no, I'm 23. I can't. But eventually someone did. And it was a massive undertaking, because you think about 50 years of systemic like tooling and system of play. And we had to change every chair Barbie could sit in, every outfit to ensure that it could fit these new bodies. The size of her convertibles were all set to some initial measurements. And we wanted to create this universal system that was inclusive and diversive and reflective. And the brand took a really risky move, and we invested a lot on the back end to put that out because it was strategically the right thing to do. And since that start of that campaign and the introduction, you know, the business has doubled. So certainly consumers voting with their wallet and with their time and their attention and reinforcing that diversity, representation, inclusion matters and is something they're willing to spend on.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it was coming right off the backs of that last panel, which we got to hear bits and bobs of. But, you know, I mean, Krista speaking to it, it takes work and it takes breaking out of existing systems and acknowledging, yeah, we're going to do things differently. We're going to look I mean, we now have an annual process that we're looking at the development of the world and what the world looks like across a variety of factors, whether that's race or physical attributes, et cetera, and making sure that the product line, I mean, Krista and her team, some of them are here, do an amazing job of keeping us accountable to those factors and making sure that we're walking the walk. You know, we say that diversity and inclusion is a key tenet of the DNA of this brand now, and we've got to make sure that we're keeping ourselves honest and holding to those metrics that we've established for how we can do that as a brand.
So building upon that, I actually had a question that's perfect for this, which is connection and community are a new currency. So how's Barbie currently fostering the connection with your consumers and bringing together people that have different perspectives? Like, what are some of the other things you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a build on kind of what we're talking about. I mean, we started this journey of kind of establishing the purpose and then really thinking about how we could blow that out across all of the key ownable touch points of the brand, right? So you think about from a communications perspective, you know, the start of this campaign, you heard what Krista talked about with product. I think we're we have taken steps over the last few years. Now that the platform of the brand has increased even bigger, the success of the sales, et cetera, we started a social mission, which is ultimately about, leveling the playing field for girls. We partner with a variety of nonprofits. We raise funds every year. It's called the Dream Gap Project. Go check it out online. Please donate. Create moments in time around key cultural conversations, whether that's International Women's Day or National Day of the Girl, where we can participate in that conversation around what's going on with girls and women and what we can do to ultimately be a part of the change and be part of that conversation. We develop a whole host of amazing products, content, edutainment for kids that ultimately can continue to participate in that conversation, as well as conversations around D&I, et cetera. Really critical piece of, I think, being a brand today. You've heard all the stats, consumers want to buy from brands that align to the values that they have. I think our stat is something like 70% more likely to purchase from a brand that aligns with their values. So I think the difference in where we spend our time from a marketing perspective and how we think about that as a critical piece of our activity has ratcheted up at such a higher level than when I started on the business 10 years ago, for sure.
Yeah. And in our industry, the average life of a brand is 5 years. And yet we sit here today with a brand that is 63 years young. Barbie looks great for her age.
And number one in the industry the last 2 years.
Yeah, just throwing that out.
Yeah.
And not something we take for granted.
No.
It was hard earned. But as we, you deal with something like that, everybody's got a Barbie story, and we're dealing with multi-generations who've experienced the brand, who've grown up with the brand, who played with the brand, who are now gift givers or purchase occasion givers or parents within the household of kids who are of that age. And then you have this interesting phenomenon where Barbie is in of herself a personality, an influence, a celebrity, if you will. And so at any given time, we are talking to, one of the initial generations that Barbie touched. We are talking to parents who recently touched the brand. We are talking to kids who are entering the brand for the first time. And then we are dealing with Barbie as a celebrity and an icon, influencing culture and participating in certain trends in and of itself. And so the marketing calendar is complex and layered, and we are often trying to ensure, though, that consistency and purpose is the North Star for each of those things. So wanting to make sure that thread is there, that the product reflects it. We've got a commitment to be putting out X number of sheroes and role models for girls. We believe that if you can see it, you can be it. And so our careers line is so important in that sense. And so it's reflected in toy, but then so are our partnerships and how we use that from a vetting process. And sometimes those two things beautifully coincide together. So earlier this summer, we released our latest Inspiring Women doll of Dr. Jane Goodall, which was an amazing opportunity. The doll is made of ocean-bound plastic and is a recyclable fashion doll. The package is entirely cardboard and bio-based. So it is a beautiful marriage of our ability to participate in culture to help further the commitment that our company Mattel has made to further our eco footprint by 2030, and then also provide edutainment and connect with culture of this woman of such iconic status that's so relevant for all of those generations.
And I think you hit on it so beautifully. The stories piece is a really interesting part. These stories, you talk to almost anybody you're going to partner with, they have a story about the brand. And sometimes it's really powerful and personal. We honored Laverne Cox with a doll earlier this year, and her story and what Barbie represented to her in her journey. I'm going to tear up talking about it, but was denied access to the product as a kid, and now buys a Barbie doll for herself every year on her birthday as a commemoration of sort of where she's at in her journey. And being able to now amplify that story as part of honoring her is just a really beautiful moment. So I think that piece of it, and sort of it's a powerful piece, and one that, again, we are eternally paranoid given where we've been on the brand, but always looking at, there's such a power in having generations of consumers who've grown up with your brand. And if you can unlock and tap into those natural stories, it's a beautiful way to continue to reinforce and build that community around your brand.
Yeah.
To your sort of initial question.
So one of the areas when we were talking earlier, the Cardiff research, I thought was fascinating, and how it relates back to a doll can help change the world. I know we have a second video.
Yeah.
I think that's good to set the stage for this.
who goes to school in the morning. Any questions? Welcome to our house. I like your dog, it's cute. Hi, Mom. Yes, that is a very good point.
I mean, I'm a mom of 3 and that I'm like, don't cry. It's so sweet. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about the research. I think it's great for everyone to hear about the research.
Yeah, this all started from the standpoint of, for those of us who work in dolls and work in the category and work on the brand, I mean, we believe our products are doing good for kids, and we understand sort of the impact that they can have, but we had never really partnered with a research organization on really understanding what that was. So back in 2019, we started a partnership with Cardiff University out of the UK in their neuroscience department, and literally they did a study on looking at what happens in the brain while kids are playing with dolls. And what it showed is that it activates the same sort of center in the brain that allows for developing social emotional skills like empathy. And so that was sort of the inspiration for this brief, was basically, if a doll can help generate empathy, particularly at a time like now, maybe a doll can help change the world. And so that was sort of the foundational thing. And one of the things that we've seen with parents, and sort of, again, continuing to build their perception and their affinity for the brand, is one of the things that they want to know is that the products they're giving their kids have positive impacts on them, right? So again, it speaks to that. But yeah, so we have a multi-year partnership with them. They're amazing partners. There's an amazing doctor named Sarah Gerson, who's actually American, but works out of there, who's led the study and also has an amazing Barbie story as well that we were able to amplify as part of it. But this is a sort of continued campaign that we started back in, I guess it was just last year. Yeah, hard to believe. But it's been a great opportunity to, again, sort of engage in a very sort of new and specific conversation about scientific benefits, but also a great way to celebrate kind of where the brand is at today and that impact.
And I think as we opened by talking about what we call Imagine the Possibilities, that first campaign, and then you look at it today, the heart of both of those was insights driven. And so as we sit here today about how do you grow brands, how do you continue to innovate, connect with culture, we go back, we are consumer and data obsessed, because what led to that first campaign, which was award-winning and highly successful, and the POS attribution to it is impressive. But it came from the fact that, again, like, parents had forgotten what the benefit of playing with dolls was. They didn't know who Barbie was, and they told us what we needed to do to help fix that. We know through studying today, again, that what parents are looking for, their biggest concerns for their kids. We're obsessed with studying sort of family dynamics and generational concerns as they look to grow up kids into highly functioning adults. And we knew that empathy is one of not only the biggest concerns and things that parents want to see develop in their kids more than academic skills today. But we also know that those skills, those social emotional skills, are ones that are predicted to be higher indications of success into adulthood. And so sort of validating what we believed was the power of our brand and then putting it out there. And if you'll notice, like, we said a doll can help change the world. We didn't say a Barbie can help change the world. That is actually a category insight. But we believe it is an important one. And as a category leader, it is our duty to continue to innovate and educate and help bring everybody along with us. But that journey and those insights that led to the first campaign, that have led to the second campaign, that will ultimately lead to the third campaign, come back from studying the consumer and then ensuring that we are addressing and tackling those heads on.
I love that. I just feel like it's so inspiring, the power and the positive impact that Barbie is making, not just on little kids, but like on society.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I don't know. It's, so I'm also very insight and data. I'm like a data nerd and insight nerd. So one of the areas we talked about that's also data, and I'm very curious because it's timely, is about the pandemic. So if you think about the last few years and how consumer purchase behavior, path to purchase has changed during the pandemic, and then you think about purchasing a doll or a toy during that time frame, would love to better look into Barbie specifically, like how have your marketing strategies changed? What have you done to connect with consumers and make sure you're connecting with consumers across the ever-changing landscape of consumer touch points?
Product. Okay. So that was, the pandemic is rough for us all. Because as the marketing team, we're sitting there trying to figure out how we're adapting and what we're doing from our homes, trapped inside with our families. So, interesting time for everybody. We're survivors. But, when we were sitting there thinking about this, the purchasing, the retail landscape was, changed overnight. We had known that e-com was going to accelerate. We had projections, we had numbers, and by 2020, we were delivering 2025 levels of a predicted shift in e-com to brick and mortar sales. So it accelerated that fast for our industry. And while we had always sort of been digitally minded as a corporation and we had all these great e-com assets, we had to ratchet that up really, really fast and put our support there. We had to change our media mix model, but more importantly, we had to ensure that we could show up where the consumer was. And so that meant touching literally everything from the marketing assets that we were briefing and developing on to literally changing how we produce certain products and toys. So we moved UPC codes to the front of our boxes so that buy online, pick up in store today, someone could scan, know it was in retail and move in. Those were little changes that we had to have that insight in to be able to enact immediately, try and make it a seamless experience for the consumer who is still experiencing something on shelf. But, it changed everything from distribution model to how we were showing up, then to how we were advertising, when and where.
Yeah, I mean, we went from a very seasonal business, that before was the lion's share of it was at holiday time and a little bit at Easter, to a full year business, right? For those of you who have kids, I have 2 little ones. I mean, buying, and honestly, big ticket items that used to only sell at Christmas time or Hanukkah time or whatever you celebrate towards the end of the year, became a Tuesday. It's like, I'm feeling bad about my kid being locked in the house for months. I'm going to buy him a dream house, right? So that was a radical shift in the industry. And so an item that we used to advertise the same 8 weeks every year during the hard 8, whatever, all of a sudden we were running that media year round because of the sales that we were seeing. And so that was a pretty drastic shift. And then, I mean, obviously we were seeing the spikes in content engagement from a digital perspective and streaming and all of that stuff. So we tried to capitalize on that as best we could to try to meet our consumers with where they were spending a lot more of their time all of a sudden. So certainly there were shifts in both our content strategy and our investment from a media perspective into where we were reaching consumers. But I mean, the benefit to us was, and we certainly got a benefit out of it, was, established brands won during that time period for a couple of reasons. One, families weren't going to stores anymore, so kids weren't running around seeing random things and nagging, right? It became just like, well, what am I going to get my kid? I'll get him a Barbie because they know what that is, right? So all of a sudden, parents who used to be a secondary influence on toy purchase became the primary influence, and so established brands really worked. I have a lot of new brands that failed in that period that we tried to launch, but Barbie really worked, and some of our other established brands like Polly Pocket also worked because consumers, and purchasers in particular, knew them. So we got a lot of benefit out of that. But I think the other shift that happened, and it sort of ties back to the video that you just shared, is for parents who are at home, I'll admit it, we're always looking for a babysitter for our kids. So when I give them something to do, I'm like, what can I go get done while I give you this to do? And I'm not necessarily going to sit here and watch what you're doing. And so a lot of parents today, they don't know what's happening when their kids are playing, right? They are trying to do their best to do the rest of all the 800 jobs that they're trying to do, right? But all of us being locked at home with our kids, I certainly spent a ton more time with my kids over the last 2 years than I would have if I'd been in the office. And the benefit to us is parents saw more of what play was, and they understood it at a deeper level than they typically have for the last several years. And they also realized their kids are spending a lot of time on screens, and maybe they want to spend some more time imagining and going back to traditional play. And, we've got an ad that shows that there's some real benefit in doing that. So I think it's helped lift the perception of our whole industry in a lot of ways because of what's happened. It's reminded people of what that power is.
Yeah. So with Barbie being such an established brand, I think one of the things was just keeping, I mean, you mentioned like your calendar for cultural relevance and moments, like could you give us a little bit more surrounding like, how do you ensure that you're staying like culturally relevant at the heart of everything, while also keeping those consumers who are very loyal to the brand? Like, what is that balance?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, what I'll tell you is that at any given time, the team that is working on Barbie is working on Barbie. I'll give you an example for now. We're actively managing the year end of 22. We have just sort of closed out the planning. We've got a toy fair going on at our showroom in El Segundo right now for fall 2023. And we are showing the first look at the spring 2024 line in 4 weeks. So we work aggressively ahead. And there is an opportunity in doing that real-time management to consistently analyze and learn from the milestones that you've had, adjust for the year ahead, and then plan them better into the one that's coming. And so it's an aggressive 3-year strategy plan where you've got a lot of hands touching. The joke sort of internally is, it takes a village, but with Barbie, it takes like 3 citywide blocks to keep that gal running. She's got a really talented team behind her. And we know, we've seen it. She shows up really consistently in a lot of places, and there's some annual expectation for her to do it. And then we're always looking to sort of subvert expectations. I think that is the thing, is you're a category leader, is if you don't innovate and you don't continue to surprise people with what you're capable of, that is when you leave room for competition to come in and prove that you're not relevant anymore. And as we said, we both entered the brand at a time when we weren't relevant and we weren't participating in those cultural conversations. And look, there are moments where we are absent when we should have been loud, or we miss it, and times when we show up brilliantly. And next summer will be one of those times, July 21st, 2023, Barbie the movie comes out, get ready. And that'll be a huge cultural moment. And we spend a lot of time right now getting ready for that, because it'll be the single biggest brand spend in this brand 63-year history. And so wanting to make sure that we are, getting ready for the foundation that has been laid, particularly over the last 7 to 8 years of the purposeful foundation, establishing Barbie as a role model, being the #1 gift choice for parents. Those are things, like we said, that we do not take them for granted. You will not meet 2 more paranoid people. And yet wanting to make sure we capitalize at every opportunity, so that foundation becomes so strong that nothing could break it down again.
Also, I agree with everything you said. The other thing I think that we've gotten sophisticated at is understanding the levers that we have to pull and what's the timeline on them, right? So to your earlier question about calendar, we've got amazing tentpole things that are in development that take years, sometimes decades, like the movie July 21st. That take time to come to fruition, right? And you've got these tent poles that you're building out in front, right? Product is one of them. It takes, 12 to 18 months. And so we've got levers that we can pull that can accomplish certain objectives in terms of relevance. And then we have shorter term things that we can do to ultimately drive that power, whether it's through partnerships or, more one of a kind executions, et cetera. So I think we've gotten more sophisticated at how we can think about those levers and kind of always optimize the calendar based on how we're feeling the brand is doing.
Yeah. And then we've also just built up our social presence to such a point that we can respond in real time and participate in those cultural conversations in a more meaningful, immediate way. We can engage with consumers much more rapidly through that, or when something is obviously trending or a hot topic on social, or there's an unexpected moment in history, we can show up in a way that is authentic and appropriate for Barbie to be participating in.
I could keep talking to you two for hours. So I know we only have 3 minutes left. If there's a question from the audience, if there's anyone that would like to ask something, I think we could give room for a question, maybe too. Yes.
So my name is Malia James. A marketeer and a mother. Mother of 1 girl. She's struggling to say, like I said, I'm leaving out. What you guys could do. It's a toy, but what my daughter plays with is not a toy, because it really speaks to her representation. And I grew up in the 80s. I'm not going to age myself, but I grew up in the 80s. And I didn't have dolls that looked like her.
Yeah.
And I think my parents were in the stigma, and I remember Barbie's being around, but Barbie didn't release, so I didn't have Barbie. And so as a mother, I told myself, well, my daughter's not going to have Barbie. But sitting here today, now I'm like, I'm going to rethink Barbie for my child. So just thank you guys for the work that you're doing. It's so important for her to see herself in what she's playing with. And I was under the perception that Barbie's with the playing house. But now you have her playing a career and playing revolutionary and playing, game changer. And I just want to applaud you all for that. And my question is, as a big mom, and I don't have a crystal ball to know who my daughter will be in 2 years. You already know what you're doing in fall. How do you guys come up 2 years ahead? Like, how do you guesstimate? I guess also in a way, you're also the trendsetter and you're kind of sticking from that this is what is the trend, but how do you guys 2 years ahead develop what your market is going to be in terms of design?
First of all, I got to take a moment because we have some team members in the audience, and I hope you all heard and felt that the way that we did. We will take that message back. Thank you. That is why we work so hard 2 years ahead from there. But it's a really cheeky answer. But did you see The Devil Wears Prada? So that whole moment where Miranda's talking about the blue and how like, oh, that blue that you're wearing, that's a real thing, you guys. So we are a fashion doll brand. And so in terms of aesthetics, like we really do study fashion culture like that. We have we launched a partnership with Mon earlier this year. Like we are participating in couture. We can anticipate what is going to be fashionable to the masses. It's a sophisticated element that far out. And we have people who study fashion design who work in-house at Mattel. And then from a trends perspective, YouTube has taught everybody a lot over the last 5 years, right? Like these little kids who are now make way more money than I'll ever make by unboxing and unwrapping and participating and fidget toys and popping. And, we are consumer obsessed, and we have a world-class insights team and research and development facility in-house and at multiple campuses around the globe, where we're often bringing in kids, showing them toys, we're listening to them, we're letting them tell us. And so we use sort of the art and the science of that data, that trend driven. And then there is also the gut aspect of it. There are some pieces of play that are universal. I've got 2 little ones. They surprise me all of the time with what comes out of their mouths and their imaginations, but play is fundamental, play is universal, and the play is global. And so as we think about doing that, there is a beautiful ubiquity in that, and how you can speak to a global audience by those sort of fundamental truths that we try and always remind ourselves of.
I would also add something that shifted back in that time was we opened ourselves up in a new way. And we brought external people into the conversation. And we still do that today. We have amazing sort of cultural consultants. We have an advisory council of amazing, diverse women and men that we share our plans with, because we never want to get so insular again to where we're not. There's a lot of concern back then about security, and listen, we have all those concerns still, and IP protection and whatever. And I think in some ways that hurt the teams back then because we weren't bringing people into the conversation. And then to Krista's point, we're obviously always watching what's going on all the key platforms and what's going on from a cultural conversation perspective, just on the platforms we're engaging ourselves. But I think we've also brought in, and every time we have a doll where we're representing a new community, we've done amazing work partnering with amazing organizations to bring those people to the table to be part of the conversation where we don't have those communities represented on the team or as part of, the collective folks who are working on it. So I think that's something else that we've also built into the process that has also kept us more honest and authentic to what's going on culturally.
And then the final note in terms of that is as consumers, you're voting with every purchase you make. And, our retail partners hold a lot of sway and influence and power to all the manufacturers in my industry and without. And, we've proven as a society that like diverse brands with purpose are the ones that we want to spend on. That's what we've been talking about. And so, as long as that continues, they come to the table and also hold all of their manufacturing partners accountable, right? Like we are showing them the line a year and a half out. If we weren't showing up in a good way, they would tell us. And we would be expected to change it. It's tied to our fiscal performance, right? That's the power of purpose and profit. And when you can get both of those things working in harmony, it's sort of where you unlock the magic as a marketer and, what's going to continue to fuel this brand.
Well, this has been incredible. And honestly, it's an honor to get to just speak with you in this group. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Lovely conversation.